Tonight, the countdown begins to another election, just as the country heads into a fourth wave of the pandemic.
I think it is possible to do it safely, but a number of steps have to be taken.
So what will a federal election look like with COVID-19 safety measures, and how do voters here feel? Plus,
effectively leaving us out to dry.
Calls are growing louder for a provincial proof of vaccination system, this time from business owners who say they don't want to go into another lockdown. And
put forward a vaccine policy that you could drive a truck through. It's really disrespectful and it's dangerous.
Why some U of T faculty say the university's new vaccine requirement rules don't go far enough. Good evening, I'm Farah Morali. CBC News has learned that Canadians will be heading to the polls next month. Justin Trudeau, who holds a minority government, is expected to ask the Governor-General to dissolve Parliament on Sunday. With an ongoing pandemic and the country heading into a fourth wave, there are concerns from voters and opposition leaders. But some medical experts and political scientists say there is a safe way to hold the vote. The CBC's Dali Ashry explains.
During the federal by-election for the Toronto Centre seat last October, a quieter and less crowded polling station. And with COVID cases expected to rise by the fall,
These adjustments that just have to be made.
Local epidemiologist Dr. Fahad Razak says a similar approach might be taken this coming federal election.
Enhancing ventilation, filtration through things like HEPA filters, and then reducing the density of people within a space. So if you have a room, you potentially may historically have had 20 people in that room. Well, in the pandemic, maybe that's now 5 to 10 people.
Today, some mixed feelings from voters about the safety of heading to the polls right now.
A mail-in ballot I would also do for sure. I mean, that's the safest route, I would say, if they had that choice.
And how do you feel about potentially going into a building and cast the vote, or especially during the pandemic?
It doesn't bother me. I do think that they should have some level of protection and make sure people are coming in.
Elections Canada tells me they still haven't identified polling locations, but if schools are an option, they will have to adhere to COVID health protocols, such as creating voting areas that are far away from classrooms and separate entrances and exits into the building. They also plan to hire extra election workers. Masks will have to be worn and extra cleaning precautions will have to be taken. Election workers will also have to ensure that doors and windows are open for ventilation. Canada's Chief Public Health Officer believes it can be done safely.
Whether it's the social distancing and mask wearing and all of those measures that everyone's pretty used to.
While this is what election rallies look like in 2019, candidates will have to think outside the box when it comes to ways to reach voters.
A nightmare scenario for any of the parties would be if they held a rally or an event that became a super spreader event. If they did that, I think that would go over very badly politically.
Events that are outdoors, ideally with people vaccinated, ideally using masks if they're really close together.
Razak says safer options can be done remotely, whether it's virtual campaigning or mail-in ballots. Elections Canada says it expects as many as 5 million mail-in votes this year compared to fewer than 50,000 in 2019. Dahlia Ashry, CBC News, Toronto.
With that federal election likely just weeks away, a coalition of business owners here in Toronto is pushing to have their voices heard. As Greg Ross reports, they've joined forces with local politicians to call for an extension to federal funding for small businesses that have been hit hard by the pandemic.
City Councillor Kristen Wong-Tam hit the streets in her Toronto Centre ward today, meeting with small business owners who are still feeling vulnerable as the city continues to slowly reopen.
The wage subsidies under the Emergency Act has been a lifeline. The commercial rent subsidies have literally kept many businesses afloat, but they are going to be terminated on October the 23rd.
Without that funding, these business owners fear they may not be able to survive.
It is going to be extremely challenging for independent businesses.
They say even though they've been allowed to reopen, business is still way down.
When your revenues are half of what they were, a quarter of what they were, but your expenses are still 100% of what they were, what's the end result?
And they say the recovery could take years.
When we don't see visitors coming into our city, we don't have the tourism, we don't have festivals or conferences or convention, we know that not only were we the first first hit when those international borders close, we know that our recovery will be the last.
With an election expected to be called this weekend, they believe that this needs to be a top priority.
We need these programs to help backstop us so that we can continue.
Subsidies for small businesses have already cost the federal government billions. Marcy Ian won Toronto Centre for the Liberals in a recent federal by-election. She joined Wong Tam today. The Conservative Party candidate for the riding, Ryan Lester, told CBC in a statement, spending to protect Canadians in a pandemic was the right thing to do, and Conservatives supported it. But he went on to say, we need to wind down emergency COVID support programs in a responsible way. But there are fears without these programs, the toll will be far greater on the economy.
The important thing for us to recognize is that investments in small business and in mainstreams brings back economic prosperity.
They say this coalition of small businesses and community leaders is growing by the day, and they plan to make as much noise as they can between now and the federal election expected in September. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
A Toronto steakhouse has been forced to shut down due to COVID-19. An outbreak was declared at Harbour 60 restaurant on Monday, but Toronto Public Health only ordered the restaurant to be shut down today. There are at least 6 cases linked to the restaurant. Public Health can require businesses to close for a minimum of 10 days if there are more than 5 confirmed infections. Harbour 60 is the only workplace in the city right now that's been ordered closed due to a COVID-19 outbreak. Ontario reported more than 500 new cases of COVID-19 today, the highest since mid-June. The rising case count has led to more calls for a provincial proof of vaccination certificate or a vaccine passport. Some businesses say they've been forced to come up with their own rules and are hoping for standardized guidelines. Lorenda Radikop has more on the demands for a government plan.
So far, this French restaurant and bar in Parkdale is sticking to patio service, not open for indoor dining.
In absence of responsible guidelines, we don't think it's really fair for us to do that, but put our customers potentially at risk.
The owner of Chanticleer wants the government to do more.
They're effectively leaving us out to dry, where they're letting the businesses and individual citizens accept the vitriol that should be directed towards government. Sometimes government has to make hard decisions.
That vitriol followed their public stance on proof of vaccinations. Last month, the restaurant announced plans to require mandatory vaccinations for indoor diners. What followed was negative reviews and fake reservations. This dance school also received a few negative reviews after saying it would require all students to have their shots.
If it's not me, who's going to make a difference? If it's not now, when? I would always love to say that it would be amazing if the government gave the small businesses clear instructions on how to navigate, because I didn't know. I was calling lawyers, different lawyers. I'd be like, hey, can you give me some free advice on how to navigate this?
We don't know. One business group is calling on the province to come out with a plan to ensure businesses can stay open.
Small business owners have been absolutely hammered in this province, crushed in this city. And so we need to ensure that we do not go through that again. 3 has been unbearable, 4 would be catastrophic. We cannot be locked down again.
The province says any vaccine certificate should be the same across the country, and that now the current vaccine proof is available for companies that choose to require it.
I have on my phone my vaccine certificate. I have it in paper as well. And so I can produce that whenever needed.
Today, Mayor John Tory sent out a statement urging the province to work with the federal government on a proof of vaccination system here. He says he believes a provincial plan is the best way to prevent another lockdown.
You may soon need proof of vaccination to attend major sporting events in the city. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment says it's in talks with public health officials and expects to make an announcement next week. Lorenda Radikop, CBC News, Toronto.
As businesses push for a provincial proof of vaccination system, some post-secondary schools are unveiling their vaccination policies in anticipation of the start of the fall semester. Some are requiring students to be fully immunized. Others are only asking that vaccination status be shared. But as Kirthana Sasitharan explains, vaccine requirements won't necessarily mean a fully vaccinated campus.
Ontario post-secondary schools are coming out with their vaccination guidelines ahead of a hopeful school year after almost 2 years of online learning. Ontario Tech University is among them, requiring mandatory vaccines among students and faculty on campus, which makes Professor Vivian Stamatopoulos elated.
I'm very happy that our institution is taking this leadership and doing what, many of us believe is the right thing to do.
She's waiting to find out how to submit her proof of vaccination, citing that requirement should be mandatory as well.
We should be requiring the vaccination receipts for the second dose. I think it's prudent that we take a stricter approach given the landscape we're in right now.
Here's what she means by stricter. The University of Toronto also announced a vaccine requirement to enter campus, but students are only meant to self-declare, and only under certain circumstances will proof be required. For those not vaccinated, they'll have to take rapid screening tests.
It means the vast majority of people who spend time on the university campus are going to be able to define for themselves whether they're vaccinated with no proof at all. What's a problem is to describe this as a vaccine mandate or a vaccine requirement, when in fact there's no requirement. What's being sold is essentially a public relations exercise saying that they should trust what people have self-declared.
With daily COVID numbers rising, Professor Stamatopoulos says requiring proof on campus is imperative, especially with vaccination rates where they are among the student population.
The percentage of Ontarians aged 18 to 29, which is the majority of our student base, only is under 60% are fully immunized. We really need to take stricter measures to protect public health.
Institutions like Seneca go a step further, requiring students to be fully vaccinated with proof, and those who are not or require accommodation may still not be allowed on campus, which makes students heading to campus feel much more assured.
Knowing that everyone you're beside, when you're sitting beside someone in class or you're in line at the cafeteria, is going to be vaccinated. I think that's what students need to hear.
Late today, York University also announced their own vaccine mandate, but others like Ryerson have yet to make their policy public. Other institutions are requiring vaccines in residences or for certain sport activities. Kirtan Asasi there in CBC News, Toronto.
Today is the deadline for parents to choose whether they want their kids to return to the classroom or continue learning online. Ahead of a new curriculum, the Toronto District School Board rolled out a selection form to families last week, giving students the option of returning to in-person learning or sticking with virtual classes. Parents have until the end of today to fill out the form. If they don't submit it, students will automatically be placed into in-person learning. Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. Colette, it felt just a touch cooler today, even in the breeze, but that heat warning is still in effect.
Yeah, really, it was kind of those morning hours where it seemed like, okay, maybe this isn't quite as hot as it's been the last few days because of some of the storms and then the leftover cloud cover that was in play. By the time we get into the heat of the afternoon, yeah, there we are with those temperatures near 30 degrees and humidex values near 40. So that heat warning is still in place, and keeping in mind that it also has criteria for the overnight temperatures, and those again tonight will be in the low 20s. So we hold on to the heat warning from Environment Canada. However, we will see things changing up tomorrow as we'll see the air masses change up. It's going to take a little time though to really feel the relief. So give it to Friday evening into Saturday. So daytime highs for today, yeah, there we were. Even if we have to round it up, 30 degrees that we're looking at. And as we're going to see this new air mass come in the morning hours, some showers, especially around the Niagara region. But I do want you to know that we're talking about some thunderstorm activity and that developing into the afternoon as this system passes by. So a look overnight tonight, 22, tomorrow, 29 degrees. Vera.
Thanks, Colette. Toronto police have arrested a man in connection with the sexual assault of a child dating back to the early 2000s. 60-year-old Warren Eugene was arrested earlier this week. He's charged with 5 counts of sexual interference with a person under the age of 16 and 5 counts of sexual assault. He's also facing a number of other charges. Police allege that between 2000 and 2003, a boy was befriended and sexually assaulted on multiple occasions. Investigators are concerned there may be other victims. They're asking anyone with information to contact police. Ontario's finance minister released the province's first quarter finances today. He says since the last budget, there have been positive economic signs.
We're putting aside another $2.2 billion to make sure that we have the resources available to deal with what's around the corner. That's the world that we live in.
That money will be set aside for a COVID-19 fund. Bethlen Falvey adds he's reducing the government's deficit projection by $700 million. The next fiscal review will be released in November. Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh shared some happy news today on social media. Singh revealed on Twitter that he and wife Gurkiran Kaur Sidhu are expecting a baby, the first for the couple. He said they're very excited for this new adventure. The news comes on the heels of an expected federal election call on Sunday. You are looking at a live shot of downtown Toronto. It is 26 degrees, but with the humidex, it feels closer to 32. We will head back to Colette now for a look at your extended forecast. Colette, we'll soon be parting ways with this extra hot, extra sticky conditions.
Yeah, that's right, Farah. And I know for many folks that'll be kind of a welcome change to sort of see things just a little more comfortable, a little easier to breathe, and also more comfortable for sleeping, right? But let me just kind of show you how it's going to play out. We're still seeing the temperatures overnight tonight into tomorrow morning with some low 20s, all right? And through the day tomorrow, still approaching 30 degrees. Humidex values will be in the mid to upper 30s, but this is really where it's going to change over as we get towards the latter part of the day. And that means that overnight Friday into Saturday, down into the teens, and Saturday's daytime highs probably struggling to get to the mid-20s, and then look at that low into Sunday. Yeah, we may dip down to 13. That'll be a big change for what we've been feeling. And then 23 to, I'm actually going with 24 for the daytime high there for us on Sunday. So because we're seeing two very different air parcels playing it out here, we will have the development of not just some showers kind of towards midday tomorrow, but likely some thunderstorm development as well. So the Niagara region and especially north and to the east of the city will be looking out for that, although there's a chance we could have an isolated storm go through the city as well. So that's towards the afternoon, early evening, and then as those winds change direction behind that front, it's going to bring down those dew points, and that's when it's going to start to feel better. Tonight, though, still sticky into southwestern Ontario, looking at some of that storminess, too, as that front comes through into the afternoon hours. And your lows tonight for the GTA, 22 degrees. And then tomorrow, I know it doesn't seem like it's a big change. It's not a big one, but it's a little bit, so it'll just feel slightly improved tomorrow. It's that transition day, right? And then it is into the weekend where you'll really notice how much it just isn't as sticky, but it's also easier to breathe, especially for anyone with any kind of respiratory issues here. So Saturday's high, 24, Sunday, so I was saying 24, 25 degrees there. I'm thinking we'll see it a little bit warmer at the airport than we will in the downtown core, where we'll be at 24. Monday, 27, some heat coming back into Tuesday, but look at that dry spell. It's not till we get to Tuesday again where we'll have that chance of showers coming back at us.
Some of Canada's top athletes got a special congratulations today at Sherway Gardens. The facility held a drive-in celebration for those returning from the Olympics in Tokyo. Attendees got a chance to speak to their heroes, and some even got to hold a gold medal. Our cameras caught up with some of Canada's best in the world of sports.
A world record would have been icing on the cake, but it's one of those things where Olympic record, like you were saying, Olympic gold medal was the most important thing to us. And I was able to be the flag bearer at the closing ceremony. So it's like all my wildest dreams came true.
Come home and it be support and love is just a great feeling. We're so competitive, but I was happy with how I did, and I think I've learned over the years is to take it meet by meet. There's always more to improve, and the more to improve, the better you got.
It's nice to be back on home soil and to have some time to decompress and process everything and relax, rejuvenate, and just kind of comprehend what the last 3 weeks we experienced in Tokyo were like.
As long as you're healthy and as long as you're training and working towards a specific goal and you love the sport, then you can do it for as long as you please.
Well, if you've taken a look at the calendar lately, you know what tomorrow is. Friday the 13th. And in Port Dover, that usually comes with the roar of motorcycle engines and tens of thousands of people. This year marks 40 years since the beach town became an annual spot for motorcycle enthusiasts to come together. And while the anniversary won't be marked in a big way because of the pandemic, locals are still preparing for crowds of bikers.
Friday the 13th is a tradition, right? And this year it happens during this strange kind of last year and so we've gone through, and it's a whole new ball game. This year it's not going to be a sanctioned event by any organization, so we're going to be limited in what we have to offer. So there'll be limited food supplies, limited water supplies, beer supplies, because there will be no service clubs this year volunteering to do that sort of thing. Not they didn't want to, it's just that because of the situation, to try to keep everybody safe, they decided not to encourage gatherings such as this one is.
The county is saying it's a non-event, but they're still preparing a little bit for it because we know that there's going to be crowds coming.
And there you go. Thanks for stopping in.
We've had a real rough time. We've only been open just shortly and, closed quite a bit of that last year and this year. So this will help us get through the winter.
We expect business to increase. We have a Thursday where we have a whole prep day to prep for the whole increase of people.
I've lived in Port Dover my whole life, so I've seen a lot of Friday the 13th. It's always exciting to see the influx of people. Our store inside will be closed that day, so we will be selling our Friday the 13th shirts outside.
It'll be challenging when we bring in an additional 50 to 100,000 people into town. We'll try our hardest and we'll work as fast as we can and try to pump the food out and have a big turnover that day. That's our goal.
Well, we hope you enjoy the start of Friday the 13th tomorrow and find a way to celebrate as well. That is our show for you tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Kelby Ewan has your next local newscast at 6 p.m. and I will see you back here tomorrow at 11. Good night.